Are we frozen?
Welcome everybody to our panel discussion. We will be getting started shortly. Please feel free to ask any questions and put it in the chat. We will be looking at questions on both Facebook and YouTube. In a few moments, I will introduce you to our panelists and we will get started. Welcome everyone to our panel discussion on intersectional women healing. We have our vast discussion that's planned. We are going to be introducing our panelists in the order on my screen. Again, just a quick reminder, feel free to ask any questions that you have in the chat. So let's go ahead and get into it. I want to start with an introduction of PK Vu, who is a clinician in our adult system of care. Welcome, PK. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well. My full name is Paku. I go by PK. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist with the older adult team. We see individuals that are 16 above, dealing with, mental health diagnosis. So I've had the honor and privilege of working with a team.
Thank you so much, PK.
Thank
We're
you.
excited to have you. Next up, we have Jessica Bloom from the Marjory Mason Center. Good morning, Jessica. How are you?
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and to be here with everyone today. My name is Jessica Bloom, and I am the Clinical Service Manager at the Marjory Mason Center. As probably many of you know, the Marjory Mason Center works to support and empower adults and children affected by domestic violence. That includes our crisis services, our shelter services, legal, clinical, and education and prevention services. And my role at the agency is that I oversee all our clinical services. So we provide individual services for men, women, and children who are both victims, and for the offenders, because we want to take a holistic approach in really treating and intervening and preventing, intimate partner violence.
Thank you so much for being here, Jessica. Appreciate all that you do. Next up, we have Kyleen Hashimoto. She is from our Fresno County Behavioral Health Board, and she has a lot of other projects that she is working on. Welcome, Kyleen. How are you?
Good. Thanks for inviting me here. And as you said, I always feel weird reintroducing myself. So I'm Kyleen, as stated, and I was recently appointed as chair for the Fresno County Behavioral Health Board, and started out as a person with lived experience and a transitional aged youth mental health advocate. So facilitating and just sharing my story. And I am now a committee member for the Mental Health Services Oversight and Accountability Commission Youth Innovation Project Planning Committee, and as well as a MHS OAC Innovation Incubator Analysis Group, and recently joined the SOAC Family Peer Leadership Committee. So I'm excited to be here and learning from all of these great panelists here today.
Thank you so much, Kyleen. We appreciate you for being here as well. Next up, we have Melissa Knight, who is the founder and CEO of The Art of Anger, our local rage room. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me. This is just such an important opportunity for women and for the community to hear what's going on in terms of healing. The Art of Anger is a trauma transformation center. It is a rage room, but it's unlike any other rage room that you might encounter. It is holistic and artistic and therapeutic. And when you're all done crashing your stuff, you can work with one of our artists in residence and create a unique piece of art out of the shards of destruction, so that you are looking at your rage outside of your body and moving yourself forward in the trajectory that you self-determine. And you're reminded that you're already on your healing journey. Thank you.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing. I hope that we can learn a little bit more about that in our panel discussion. But before we get into it, I just want to let our audience know that we are monitoring the Facebook and the YouTube. So if you see me looking to the side, it's just because I'm monitoring for questions. My name is Dr. Tiffany White. I'm the Diversity Services Coordinator with Fresno County Behavioral Health. So with that, we will get right into it. And so I'm going to ask our panelists to jump in whenever we answer the questions. We're not going in any particular order. So if the spirit moves you, please answer the question, all right? So our first question, of course, is, what does healing mean to you?
Healing is about taking responsibility for moving ourselves forward, taking responsibility for wanting to feel better, knowing that something might be off, something might feel very wrong inside, and we may or may not know where it's come from. We may have an idea of that, but just the desire to fix it and seeking the help that we need to do that is such a critical component. So it means holistic ways of bringing community together to support our individual work of healing, so that as we heal individually, we heal the community.
Yeah, I would agree that healing is definitely a personal process, and I guess a process of acceptance. And I don't think that you have to be completely healed in order to move forward. In fact, I think moving forward is just a part of that, your personal healing and your growth. So I know that there's different ways of coping, but I would say that healing is more of those positive mechanisms that we find.
Beautiful.
For sure. Healing to me is, learning to cope with just, painful pasts, and it's still being able to, move forward and find meaning and purpose in life, despite of, like I said, painful pasts. It's so important that we, do our own healing, whatever that looks like, and, be able to move forward from that.
And I want to add, when we first were getting together, we already started that process of healing. And I think we all knew this was going to really take a robust dialogue and conversation. And so we were talking about when we were thinking about some of the questions, how deep and meaningful and this information is around healing. And, for me, when I think about myself or the community of women, or even in the work that I do in the field of domestic violence, I looked at it very similar to some of the constructs we see in domestic violence. So the psychological, the physical and body, the social, the cultural, the sexual, spiritual, generational, all of those components where we want to have this idea of radical love, or moving and shifting the narrative from surviving to thriving. And of course, not any type of linear process, but really being able to see our ancestral strengths or our natural abilities as women in our different roles and our relationships as parents or cultures or spirituality or in our expression. And I think when I was thinking about this question, what did that really mean to me? I was thinking about it personally and professionally, and really looking at my highest self. And I was thinking of, the typical metaphor of like, when you look at yourself in the mirror, that you don't necessarily see your imperfections, but your deservedness of value as a woman. And for me, it's like being able to look at the scar I have on my body from my C-section after giving birth to my daughter, not looking at that as some imperfection, but rather a badge of honor that I was able to bring life and making that transformative process in whatever our traumas are and happen to be.
All of what you said just gave me chills, Jessica. Thank you.
Hey, that's like so powerful what you just said. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
You had said that all of our traumas and what they may be, and I know that all of you had mentioned like learning to cope with the things that we've gone through, both from an individual perspective and a community perspective, which I think is right on the money, right? What kinds of things do you think that women are needing to heal from?
I think women are walking around with so much PTSD right now from so many different directions. Jessica spoke about domestic violence, intimate partner violence. There are so many women that are surviving narcissistic relationships, relationships with sociopaths, and that may not have been physically violent, but leave really deep scars. And many may have had those relationships even at work or in families, and don't really know why they're walking around feeling like they're constantly kind of dodging bullets or being triggered and things like that, and don't even know that's PTSD. And if it was, depending upon the length of the relation and how many complex PTSD, that's absolutely happening for so many women. And then the ancestral not just generational, but ancestral traumas that looking at the Valley and the diversity of the Valley, so much of that looking across different cultures. We recently are dealing with the just abject racial traumatization of the Asian Pacific Islander community. And we see that in Latino and Latinx communities. We see that in African American communities, where we're dealing with our own stuff, but we're also dealing with what we've grown up with across families and how we were taught about that. And we're also dealing with the legacy of those traumas going back generations, and what that has meant in this country for people. That's huge for women, trying to kind of balance that, carry that, and figure out how to heal that for themselves and their families, so that healing starts now and hopefully can complete, and that we don't continue generational traumas. I know a lot of women who are saying, this ends with me. Like, I'm going to heal this because I want my daughters to be free of this, and my sons.
Mm-hmm.
I would say a recurring theme is just that we are healing from, or trying to accept and honor our experiences. So in that, I mean, like, for example, I didn't just get this job because I'm a female. I did it because I am worthy and I was a respectful applicant. Or just a personal experience is like, I have filed 2 reports on sexual harassment. And so I was second guessing myself because like they were respectable people in the community. People would tell me like, you're going to ruin their career. You shouldn't do that. But then you can't question yourself. Like, you've experienced it. Clearly there's people that support you and behind you. So it's not just you. And so even though you think of others, you have to put yourself first at times. And so just really honoring your experience and that knowing that you are valid is something that I think we're just as humans trying to struggle with and work through. So as women, I know that we've had our personal experiences and individual, not biases, but I guess, yeah, our personal experiences, but just everyone is trying to work through their own minds and perspectives of themselves. So.
Yeah. Kyleen, I want to say thank you for sharing that
Yes.
Mhm.
piece about you. That really moved me. I was thinking about, just as I was listening, the validation that you got from your community, but also that you're giving to yourself, that permissiveness, because I think that's what it is. What are women needing to heal from? This level of violence, right? We're often forced into this role of sufferer because we take on injustices and unwanted pain, whether it be through any type of violence of interpersonal relationships or sexual violence or harassment, human trafficking, bonded labor, right? All of these experiences that are often invalidated as we go through the world on multiple levels, whether it be personally that we've integrated the belief system of sexism, or systemically on a micro level that reiterates a community and societal violence in economics, in our health, in our workforce, like the example that you gave. I mean, really, when you look at it historically, 1994 was the first time that we ever had a law in place in the violence against women. That was really not that long ago,
Yeah.
right? And being able to identify how that internalization process happens and really freeing ourselves from and unpacking that, I think, nationally and globally as women, and the marginalization that we've experienced. And then, of course, the intersectionality of how other groups, I think we'll delve into that a little bit later.
And the permission is so important. You're right. Giving ourselves permission to heal, to stand in our power, to own who we are, and that we have a right to heal and to feel whole and to fill the holes that are inside of us from the traumas that we've experienced. And not only do we have a right to do that, we have a responsibility to do that, and we're the only ones who can.
Mhm.
Sure. There is so much research done out there about how trauma impacts an individual. And so until we can allow ourselves to heal, right, it's going to be really hard to move forward. So, you know, emotional wounds, trauma, um, it's it's very important for healing.
Yeah. There's
And I
this
think,
worksheet that I've found that goes over the Bill of Rights of my body with a lot of clients when they come into. And this is the first time a lot of women are giving themselves permission to own their own body. You know, Kyleen, I didn't mean to interrupt you if you want to.
no worries. I know that we're all like looking at little television screens here, but something that I always like to, I guess, think about is acknowledging the pain chart. So like when doctors ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, how much pain do you feel? Pain is very relative and it's a personal experience or thought. So you can't tell me that my trauma was, or minimalize my trauma, because this is something that was on a scale of 8, or I would rate it a 10. So don't tell me that, like, just because the situation itself maybe didn't seem like such an extreme factor to you, that doesn't mean that it didn't affect me or affect somebody that I know to that extent.
Yeah.
I'm loving this conversation so much. I like don't even want to like talk because I feel like this synergy that's happening is just so wonderful. There's so many things that I wanted to like, wait, I want to go into that further. You had mentioned, both Jessica and Kyleen had mentioned just some of the barriers to healing, and that being just our community, members, people who are invalidating our own traumas that we have gone through, our pain. And I was just thinking as you were saying that, how many women have normalized pain as a part of their experience, to where, because our experiences are so diverse, where one person may go through something and it's super traumatizing, but for another person who has gone through that their whole life, it's just normal, right? And so I think that this conversation in normalizing healing is a necessary part, a radical part of healing, of self-preservation, as something that is so meaningful to not only to women, but to everyone, really. It's a radical act, right? And so I want to go into that a little bit more. What are some of the barriers that you think are exist for women who are trying to work on their healing?
I think what society tells us about different ways of healing is huge. We were just speaking about permission, and one of the things that I deal with regularly with the art of anger is people walk in, and by the time I'm kind of doing an introduction of kind of how it works and all of that, and folks are getting choked up, and they're like, "Is this normal?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's absolutely normal, because you're about to give yourself permission to do something that you've never given yourself permission to do." And that feels wrong. It feels like, wait a minute, am I really going to do this? And it's this pressure from society that this is how you're supposed to, that's supposed to, this is what's acceptable. And in the work that I do at the Art of Anger, anger and grief and rage and hurt and those are heavy emotions, and they get buried deep in the body. Then they get buried by shame, pushed down even further. They attach to cells, they make us sick, and we have to pull them up and out. They need a physical expression, and we need to pull that stuff out of us so that we can make room for the good stuff we're trying to bring into our lives. And giving ourselves permission, and the barrier being all of the people that think, your emotions and your expression of them make me uncomfortable. And so we're living our lives inside this cage of what other people are comfortable with. And that's a huge barrier. These are emotions that make other people uncomfortable. So then they're not acceptable. So I'm supposed to live 1/16 of my life. Is that okay? And why are other people uncomfortable with them? Because they've not done their healing work. Right? If we normalize healing, as you were saying earlier, Tiffany, then yes, we can all heal together, because we all are giving ourselves and each other permission to do this really difficult work that kind of puts on blast that, wait, I've got some things that need to be healed, and I'm okay being upfront about that. We all do. We absolutely all do. And we need to completely release the shame associated with it, because that's another huge barrier to healing.
For sure. When you mentioned shame, I thought of other barriers could also include cultural factors. For some cultures, it's very shameful to talk about your own stuff. It's seen as almost like what goes on stays within, right? And so that, and including maybe as women, we take on a lot of responsibility, whether we're taking care of someone, or our children, or having to balance that with work. And so those responsibilities and expectations can also be barriers into carving out time for ourselves to do what we love, to engage in those activities.
Good point. And the idea that doing that is selfish.
Right.
Right. Selfish. And that's not, no.
Yeah. I know I sometimes struggle with that. I mean, I'm a mother of 5 little ones, 7 and under, right? So it's so hard to find time to just be, alone without fingers crawling underneath the door, So it's, for me, it's so important that I, take advantage of every minute I get where I'm alone, to either do my deep breathing or to kind of escape somewhere else in my mind for just that brief time, so I can, come back and be present.
Beautiful work.
Melissa, when you were talking, the image came to my mind of, in that moment when someone's starting that process of the release, what a sacred and safe moment you must provide. And really, for me, that's a significant barrier, is that level of safety, right? And so my mind is always looking at, from a domestic violence perspective in the work I do. But you were validating my sentiment when you were just talking about that sort of moment of trust that has to happen. And I think that can be a really significant barrier in terms of healing, is whether or not there's safety. I think it's incredibly difficult to be able to heal something when the environment around you is not safe. There's not a trusting, supportive, moment for me to be vulnerable and feel that someone has me through this process as I go through it, in moments where we maybe doubt ourselves, and being able to look at that. And I think creating safety is such a primary battle. And it sometimes is the hardest to achieve, given the environment and context sometimes in which we're working, when we look at violence against women in general, with 1 in 3 women experiencing some level of domestic violence or sexual abuse or harassment in our country. And so, you can't have and heal if you don't have safety or a place to be.
Yeah, totally.
Right. You can't. It's hard to move in that process. And so being able to extend safety, I think in personally, as well as in our environment around us, is really critical to any forward movement.
Absolutely. And I think it's how we understand what safety is, right? And what that means for different people. So it's both the sense of like a physical safety. It's that trust piece, that I feel safe with you. I feel safe within this space. I feel safe from judgment is another part of that. And what I try to create is space where people know that this is a judgment-free zone, and no one here is going to judge you, but I also want you to not judge you. Whatever comes out when you're doing this releasing work. Yell, scream, cuss, cry, whatever comes out is meant to come out. Allow it without judgment. Allow it with gratitude that you're releasing it, right? And just be in that moment. It is sacred. It truly is sacred to allow ourselves to do this work and to support others doing the work.
Yeah, I would think that environment isn't necessarily what's physically around you. It's also like security. So like job security, or I can't leave him because say so-and-so, like I need this for physical interaction. I don't know, whatever it may be, but you also get these just snowball thoughts. So I know like in high school, so I guess just an example, like I can't fail this test because then I fail the class. If I fail the class, then I don't get into a good college, and so on and so on. So kind of building these narratives for us based on a single situation, but how do you escape that environment or that situation without knowing where you can go? So we really don't know even how to express those words sometimes, or like you were saying, like who to trust. So the barrier to getting resources or that kind of help is like, where do you begin? Or who's going to tell you and lead you down that road if you don't have that support system? And then also like internalizing all of those different narratives. So that goes back to like second guessing yourself. Do I really want to go down that path? Is that the other side really greener? So that's another thing we really struggle with.
How do we unpack that? How do we dial that back and take a look at what is that really saying? If I don't pass this test, get into this, pass this class, get into this college, what is that really saying? And what are we thinking that's saying about us? Does that mean that I'm unworthy? Does that mean that I'm unlovable? Does that mean that I'm less than the person that I think I could be or should be? How do I find value in who I am, period, without proving anything, without some outside of me test of my worth, right? How do I get back to that? And I think that is what we're talking about in helping people heal, is to recognize some of those kinds of things, like that snowball thinking that you're talking about, and helping people to understand that even that is put upon, even that's other people's ideas of who you are, and you get to unpack that. You get to set that aside. That's not yours. You don't have to own it. You don't have to live.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think as women, we just have to redefine what value is, or redefine what we think is, I guess, what our ideal selves are. I know like it's hard not to base yourself on numbers. So say your weight, your height, your grade point average, or like your credit score. So it's really hard not to judge yourself based on these numbers or like what other people are telling you. So really, like, what do you put your worth at? What do you consider worthy of yourself?
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to kind of define those personal goals, and you know that you've made it because of a feeling, not because of words necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's a personal experience, so it's hard to kind of coach someone or tell them what that is. So that's another journey that you kind of walk alone in a way.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And it keeps going back to, I think, this permission to be, that to
Mhm.
ourselves as we are on any given day and every given day. And one of the things that has really worked for me and worked for with women that I coach is the tool, I call it yes and thank you. That if we change our internal dialogue to yes and thank you more than anything else, that yes puts us present with whatever we're experiencing, whatever we're thinking, whatever is coming at us. And the thank you is gratitude, and gratitude is the fastest way to raise our vibration, right? So if we are present with whatever we're experiencing and we're saying thank you for bringing it to me, that I see it right now, doesn't necessarily mean that we've changed, whatever that thought was, but I'm aware of it. And awareness is the start of change, right? And so if we, in terms of those internal dialogues, the ways that we kind of denigrate ourselves, the ways that we talk to ourselves through the lenses of the trauma and through the voices of other people that are in our head that are crowding us out, if we begin to substitute that for the yes and thank you, then we drown out those other things, and we are simply present with thoughts that then we can evaluate and go, wait a minute, how'd that get there? I don't really ascribe to that. I don't like how that makes me feel. Thank you to myself for being present with that. And now I'm going to release that. And what we will notice is that we will have those limiting thoughts and those denigrating thoughts less and less, because what we're doing more and more is yes and thank you.
Yeah. When you mentioned that, Melissa, I thought of, the willingness, right, to look at, what we can change, and that we're not a result of our traumas,
Right.
and that you can, move forward and, practice letting go of that in the healing process.
Yeah.
So I just thought of the word willingness when you mentioned that.
Yeah, and I was thinking about like the hero complex, super shiro complex that I know that I struggle with, of that nurture or the caretaker or the putting others' needs ahead of my own before I'm able to, even realize that I am going through something. PK, you're talking about your children, right? Creating that space. I have one. And there's times where, it's this push-pull process of I want to be present and experience my child and my family and my friends. And then I feel guilty if I prioritize my needs, my healing needs, or, and so it's that internal battle of like, where did that voice come from? Where's the permissiveness, and I feel like it's ongoing. Different stages in my life, I've learned new incredible things, painful things, cathartic experiences and transformation experiences. So I think that's all part of that nonlinear process of peeling the layers of what we can within internally, and then addressing those systemic things, which at times are also outside of our control. We need other people to join. I think in other in a lot of different spaces, I've heard the difference between, I don't want an ally, I want an accomplice, right? I don't want someone to just cheer me on. I want them to be doing this work with me, especially if they're in a position of having more power or privilege in those circumstances. So having that process this duality at the same time.
And something I do want to point out is that I know that when we talk about like self-permission or like meaning wholeness is that we're not lacking self-confidence or that we're insecure, because I think you can be very confident and have high self-esteem and yet still not be self-forgiving necessarily. I think that, I mean, you're all successful women here, and that we just hold ourselves to a very high standard. Like, you have to play different roles and have those different hats of being a mom, of being a successful businesswoman, and also at the same time taking care of yourself. So it can be a lot. So how do you handle that when you have to divide your time? Like, personally, I get really stressed out if like I take time to myself, like, oh, I could be doing this, or like relaxing. I can't just meditate. I know that works for people, but I can't do it. So like, that doesn't mean that just because I love what I do is that I can't do something else I love to do, like art or something like that. But again, I just really want to highlight that women aren't necessarily always insecure, or that we're lacking permission from somebody else, or even sometimes just ourselves to do something. We're very strong. And so sometimes it's just a realization of that, and that we just need to kind of lower our bar. Like, we don't always have to succeed way up here, because the rest of the world thinks that we're way up here anyway. So really,
I think it's that internal critic that we all struggle with, that you're not doing enough, or you should do more. And I often come back to Brene Brown's quote of "You are enough," and so it keeps me in this mindset of, okay, I need to do one thing at a time, right? I can't take on all this. I'm allowing myself to let go of some of that frustration and just, from feeling overwhelmed. So coming back to this present moment of doing one thing at a time, right? And if it can't get done, do it on another day. And so it's just allowing yourself to be okay with that.
And recognizing that we can't pour from an empty cup. We absolutely have to be full in order to pour into others. And so we have to give ourselves permission to that. And it's so basic, but we forget it. It's all of us have been on an airplane. It's that don't put the baby's oxygen mask on, put yours on first, right? So giving ourselves permission to fill up so that full we can pour into others, and to keep the spout pouring into ourselves, that we're doing something in some way that is replenishing even as we're giving out, is really important. And it doesn't have to be sometimes it's overwhelming to think of, okay, I need to go and meditate for an hour, or I need to do yoga for an hour, or I need to take something, or I want to complete an art piece, or I want to take a dance class. And we think of things in terms of all this completion, right? What if we just started? What if we looked up, and narrowed down some things? What if we closed our eyes for 5 minutes? Our bodies, and if we make our bodies partners with us, right? Our bodies really want to partner with us to do this work, because our bodies are always with us, So if we know we need a 2-hour nap, and we acknowledge that, oh my God, I so need a nap, but we sit down for 5 minutes and set a timer, our body's going to meet us there. And after that 5 minutes, we're going to feel so refreshed, and we can go. And it'll feel like that 2-hour nap, because we acknowledged something that we needed, right? And we gave ourselves that. We need to champion all those moments and build on them. 5 minutes is 5 minutes that we didn't give ourselves last week.
Yeah. You're going to laugh at me on this one, but, being a mom, sometimes I really try to practice, what I preach about being mindful, practicing mindfulness skills. And so, I tell the individuals that I work with, it's not about, when you're practicing mindfulness, it's not about going on vacation to Paris or something, and then, practicing mindfulness skills there. It could be these little moments that you take. I know for me, sometimes I have to stay in the restroom a little bit longer, maybe 2 to 3 extra minutes just to kind of, breathe and, until I can go back out there to be mommy again, but, I take advantage of the time I get, whether it's, staying in the car for another 10 minutes before I go into the home or whatever, but it's just so crucial for me to just, remind myself that I need to breathe, right? Just that breath of, that brings me back to just this moment here.
Thank you for saying that. I do that driveway thing all the time. Someone will call, look, what are you doing? I'm sitting in the driveway. I'm working on getting out of the car.
Right.
Interesting, because I think particularly with women, something like self-care seems so frivolous and it's just like a luxury, right? Whereas if you reframe it to self-preservation, like you need to do it. It's a need, it's a chore. I think it becomes more meaningful and something that people are more willing to do. But again, I appreciate these conversations and just reflecting on my own experience. I think that some of my thinking as far as feeling guilt and shame, as far as promoting my own self-preservation, are that I don't have children, right? And so I've gotten messages that my whole meaning in being as a woman and experience is based on my value as creating another life, right? Being a mother. And it's like, I've had not my current employer, but previous employers who say like, you don't need vacation, you don't have any kids. Like, what do you need to rest from? And it's like,
that's wrong.
Life, like I'm still deserving of those things, and I'm still deserving of those things. Like, kids doesn't bring me value, and so I'm, and while also reflecting on Jessica and PK, like, how do you do it? Like, teach me, like, what's happening right now? Like,
I always say, we all have our own, stories, and, our details are just different.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean that if you don't have children that, that's just wrong. We still have to balance so many things in our lives. It's not just that if you have children, then, it makes you a woman or whatever, right? We still have these responsibilities that we need to balance, and self-care is so important. I can say that, because I love my 2 to 3 minutes in the bathroom. I love my 10 minutes in the driveway, right? It's all part of self-care. It doesn't matter if you're a mother or not.
Yeah, I think we're stretched thin no matter what. Whatever is the meaningful and purposefulness in our lives, it's still there. We still create that. And, I was laughing when you guys were talking about those things. I always tell clients this and tell myself, it's that like minute in the car with the jam that you have on and just like your mood. And you're like, this speaks to me so deeply. And, how important that moment is. And I can feel it when it's happening, that this moment is important, that I'm in tuned with whatever this sound is speaking to me. And, I think we need that. We all have these holes and these wounds, and they all need to be attended to, right? No injury is any different. Their injuries are still there. I think that's our shared space that we all hold as women, and being able to be permissive. There's an author that talks about, like body acceptance that I had read. The book is called The Body Is Not an Apology. And it looks at how I can, as my gender, create peace within myself, and then offer and create and allow for different ways for other bodies to show up in the world and have this same level of peace, that we can all coexist despite these differences, and we can all work to creating, meaningful existence in space, despite the differences. And it just really spoke to me, right? And they're talking about radical acceptance of our body. And I just take that as like that full, our physical body, yes, but as Melissa had mentioned, all the parts and components of our body and what our meaning and purpose is here.
I think that's so critical. There's so much harm that's been done to women, and that we've just incorporated into our beingness about the reverse of that, the lack of body positivity, the body shaming that happens, the ways that we feel unworthy because of what we may see as imperfections or flaws, or, like when you were talking about your C-section scar earlier, I was thinking about my two C-section scars and the cellulite in the mirror. What are they, right? And like the gray hairs over here, like, this is Josh, this is Marissa, and I've earned ridiculous, right? And but one of my self-care rituals I want to share is and I started doing this, and and I've been sharing with people, and it feels so amazing. Just the time that we spend bathing, showering, whatever, and lotioning, and buttering, whatever the butter is, all that, our bodies. That I speak to every part of my body. I thank my feet as I'm moving them, as I'm washing them, or as I'm putting cocoa butter on them. I'm thanking my feet for carrying me through the day, and for walking on all those shards of glass, or whatever it is, and I'm thanking my legs. I'm thanking every part of my body, and as I'm touching myself, right, and every from head to toe, and it really makes a difference because it puts you present with yourself, and our bodies are just we treat our bodies like slaves. Do this, keep going, keep going, keep going. And we don't always pay attention. By the time we're thirsty, we're already dehydrated, right? But we kept seeing the signs of, I should grab some water, or, oh, yeah. We need to kind of regroup on how we are relating to ourselves and incorporate that as self-care.
That made me think of the word balance, how we're always trying to aim for balance. And, that can be very self-soothing, what you just mentioned there, in that too, I heard you use a lot of gratitude. I mean, just being so thankful for every part of your body. And, I've made it a practice for myself that when I wake up in the morning, I at least identify 3 things that I am thankful for. And that's how I start my day, right? Because it's easy to get lost in all the, what have, should have, and, what you don't have. And so I make sure to start my day with that kind of tone and that kind of healing for myself, to say, I have enough. I'm exactly where I need to be.
The body thing, and I'm going to hush after I say this. We've talked about different types of traumas, and we've all kind of touched on sexual trauma at some point or in some way, in terms of our understanding of just the magnitude of that, and the pervasiveness of it for women around the world and here in our community. And as a sexual assault survivor, I know it personally. And I ask women, and I challenge women, when is the last time you walked naked in front of the mirror and smiled and said, you're beautiful, I love you? And that's something that is increasingly difficult, and that we need to have an understanding of the difficulty that may be for women who are survivors of sexual trauma, for women who are survivors of other types of intimate violence. And it can be a barrier for healing, and also presents a first step. It may take a long time for them to get that, but we plant the seed. When is the last time you did that? And it often, women are just, the look is like, I don't think I've ever done that. How about we start? And it may take some time to work up to that, but just even the realization that we don't, that if you live by yourself, or if your bathroom's in your bedroom, why are you walking to the bathroom in a robe? Why are it's like, are we comfortable with our bodies? And whether it's the stretch marks, whether it's the C-section scars, whether it's other kinds of scars, whether it's whatever it is, the antibody positivity, that, oh my God, I'm fat, or I'm fatter than I used to be, or I wish I were thinner, whatever that is, we have to meet it and be willing to begin to change it. And so I issue that challenge: walk naked in front of the mirror and say, hello, you're beautiful, thank you, and smile.
So a question I have for all of you moms, and Tiffany, feel free to jump in too, because I value your opinion, and I also don't have children. I'm 24. So how do you recommend to instill this confidence, or how do you plan, or I guess what would be the best method to pass this on to the next generation so that they don't feel, I guess, so body conscious or have to have these kind of concerns? Oh, hi, I have a dog, I don't have a child, but I know that stress and I guess feeling you can't always stop yourselves, but how do you create a generation that's so confident in themselves? They're not questioning.
You know, that really resonated me with that question, because when you first asked me to do this, this is the first thing that popped into my mind, because part of my healing, and when you have the idea of have children, I don't know what I thought was going to happen. It just happens, organically, like life moves and you float with it. And I think one of the biggest things is this synergy and level of connection and the healing that I found in my relationship with my daughter. And she's only 2, right? But one of the things me and my partner have really talked about is, it's really easy to say, like, go give someone a hug. I've really worked with myself and my partner to say, do you want to go give this person a hug? And if she doesn't want to, validating her experience that she has a choice. And I joke with her, but it's actually really serious. I teach her my body, my choice. And she says it in her little my body choice, right? In her little 2-year-old voice. But I think the bigger thing is as a survivor myself, I, for so long, held on to the idea that somehow I was at fault, or somehow this wasn't exactly what I thought it was. It wasn't assault because of X, Y, and Z. And the transformation healing that I have for myself and in changing that pattern for her is for her to be able to own her own body and make her own choices and know what consent is and know what that process is. So her healing, if exposure to violence of some sort, she knows where that process is and be able to unfold that. And I mean, it's like, I didn't know that was going to be a part of this process, but it certainly is. And it is probably the most meaningful thing that I have in my own recovery of abuse, next to watching her be able to have something and a different experience.
Yay, agency.
Kyleen, can you ask your question a different way? I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Even I got confused by it. So thank you for answering, Jessica. So what would you recommend is the best, I guess, what are your recommendations to build and foster like a strong generation of women, being a mother and knowing that there's always going to be these different external pressures, and helping them just cope with it and not necessarily have to internalize it so much?
That's a great question.
Okay.
My oldest is 7. She's, we're slowly learning or trying to teach her about about just being, who she is, like being herself. Like she doesn't have to do things a certain way because her friend does it that way, and that it's okay to be different. It's okay to, have emotions. It's okay for things not to work out. There's still a different way to go about it. Just teaching her that, again, you don't have to be like everyone else. You can just be who you are. And, she'll share examples of, how her friend did it this way, or how come this person has that and I don't. And so just kind of going back to the, okay, different people have different things, what are some things that you have that your friend doesn't have, and just kind of being like somewhat positive in that light to say it's okay to be different.
I have a 32-year-old daughter who has Down syndrome, and she is all kinds of amazing 24/7. And I've worked with her on agency, and it was probably one of the most liberating moments, just watching her engage agency, watching her give voice to her needs and speak for herself, and knowing that she had the confidence to do that. And we weave it into everything, Kyleen. I think it is one of the things I did with her is I take her to doctor's appointments, and I have fired doctors who would talk to me and not her. And like, I'm her, treat me like I'm her driver. And if I need to add something to something that she answers, I will. But other than that, speak to her. Don't ignore her. Don't denigrate her. Don't act like she's not here or that she's not capable of answering. Speak to her and treat her like the beautiful human being that she is. And so that teaches her that her voice matters. And it gives her the ability to speak for herself and to know that she can and she should, and she's empowered to do so. So I think what you were saying, PK, about what you tell your 7-year-old, I mean, it's beautiful. You know, we give them the permission to use their voice and to sit with their beingness and know that they're enough. And if anybody else doesn't think so, that's their issue. That's not your.
For sure.
You know, I actually could extend the question when you were asking about motherhood, but really, like, you know, you can answer this, Kyleen, maybe. Just your perspective on, well, what do women, or how can women come together to promote healing for other women, right? We're talking about the mother-child relationship, but even being able to relate in a different way, because everyone's healing is so differently. And so what are some of those ways I think that women can promote, you know, healing, because there's different barriers and diversity concerns that are needed in our own empowerment as we work together on that.
What if we hold space for each other even if we don't understand?
Yeah.
What if we sometimes we don't know what someone's going to, and we can just say, you know, I'm going to hold space for you. I'm here for you, and you know, if you need to talk, I'm willing to listen. Creating and holding space for people to be where they are and honoring where they are is crucial.
Yeah, I would definitely say, and Tiffany, I'm aware that we're pressed on time, but I would definitely say that it's more about listening more so than trying to give your advice. And if they're accepting of that advice and want your feedback and are more of the person that wants to listen, then go for it. But I think that they speak to you because they trust you and that they really value your opinion. Even if that be like a girl crying in the bathroom, I think that you just have a bond being a woman. And sometimes it's easier to talk to somebody that you don't know. So it's always just be there. Don't judge them because you don't know what they've been through either. So
For
you can always be hype woman.
Yeah. One of the things that I think helps empower other women and come together in terms of healing is everything doesn't have to be like a clinical kind of healing, right? So one of the things that I do and I encourage other women to do is give women compliments. You know, I see people in the grocery store or wherever, it's like, those are great shoes, or I love your hair, or wow, that's a great color, or, you know, whatever, or just, you know, I love telling sweet little old women, which I'm a little old woman myself now, but at Costco, you're beautiful, and watching their partner go, because then that woman will like circle back in the grocery store at Costco or whatever, and just you can see it on her face that she's like, you know, just like bolstered by that someone, you know, saw me, acknowledged me, my presence, and you know, and it's beautiful. Like the art of giving compliments is a lost art, and it is definitely a part of healing, because I think it helps women to begin to see themselves again, because oftentimes in our pain we don't see ourselves, and sometimes we start to hide ourselves, and we don't want others to see us either. Because we want to just kind of be shrouded in the pain and the comfort of the trauma. So compliments, I think, are an opener that adds some healing.
I was going to add on to this question, and this is a great piggyback onto what Melissa just said. how do we support diverse women, diverse groups, and be culturally responsive to their needs as far as healing? And we got a comment in the Facebook chat that says, my best friend, that wonderful woman right there, Jessica, told me one day, own the ground you walk on. That really uplifted me as a Chicana, a woman of color in leadership. It validated me. Just yesterday, I gave that same quote to another colleague, and what a great way to uplift each other as women.
Love it.
Wow.
So it sounds like we're doing some practicing what we preached. And I will say that how are ways that we can be responsive to different cultures?
I think the number one thing is listening. I mean, listening can go a long ways versus, I think a lot of times when I see individuals in my office, they think that I'm the expert, right? And I tell them, no, I'm not the expert at all. Tell me about yourself, tell me about your culture, tell me about all those things. And so just listening to know where they're at and where they're coming from.
Yeah, I think that we're all kind of scared to say the wrong thing, so we don't say anything at all. So that's why listening is just a huge piece of it. And for example, with the API hate crimes going on, as a person that's Chinese and Japanese, I struggled to, say anything at all because I personally didn't have that experience. I've been blessed enough where I have never felt like a victim of racism. And I know that that's not something everybody can say. So in a way, I felt too privileged, or like in mental health, I always get angry when people advocate for services that they didn't have lived experience with. So I felt like, what right do I have, even though I am Asian, to say anything? So I think that you also need to realize that so that's why you don't project your experiences onto them. And so it's so important to just listen. And so again, if they want that advice, sure, but use the resources more so. How can you help them move forward rather than just keep circulating on the same issue? And regardless of culture, we're all just human. And I think that we all have this underlying connection. So build on that.
Yeah, and I think, for me as a counselor, really being that open-mindedness and exploring the values and validation that each person that comes in, of what's important to them, and looking at, when we look at colonization, right, there was a huge eradication of cultural practices, like culture is the cure, right? In the idea, and those in marginalized communities had been taken away. I had just recently read an article in an indigenous community where they started doing throat singing again, something that had been eradicated, during European missionaries and come back in really into the late 1980s, the article was saying. And so how important that piece is, right, for clients and ourselves to acknowledge what are our cultural cures, right? What are those cultural pieces that are so important, and creating, like Melissa said, the space and hearing, like both of you had mentioned, like, what is it that you need that works for you, that may have been taken from you, but now you have the space to reclaim it.
We've said listening a few times, and I think also how are we listening? Because listening is also one of those lost arts, right? Are we passively listening? Are we listening as we're doing three other things? Are we listening and our phone's in our hand and we're checking it? Or are we making eye contact? Are we really are we listening with our whole body? Are we truly present, and are we helping that person to feel our presence with them? That kind of very active, very present listening.
Listening and validation, right?
Yes.
So we've discussed a couple of ways that we can support each other as women. What are some of the ways that women can promote their own healing? And if you don't mind just sharing some of the things that you each do to promote your own healing.
I've shared about my sacred baths and that kind of thing. I do Epsom salt baths every day because I do healing work in the community, and so I'm just it I take that into my body and into my aura, and so I'm cleansing energy and all of that. So that's a very much a part of my regimen. But yeah, that part about loving my body and thanking every part of my body is a part of that healing regimen. Acknowledging what I need, giving voice to that, um, permission, um, being present with myself.
Yeah. I think for me it's practicing gratitude. It's I recently picked up beading, and so it is the most relaxing thing I find, where my mind is just really quiet and I'm just focusing on the beading. And you know that I've yeah, it's so important for each and everyone to find that something that you love, that you find is meaningful to do. Carving out that 2 minutes, 2 extra minutes in the bathroom, whatever it is, just finding that time for you and not feeling guilty for it, right? Not feeling like I shouldn't be here, I should be cooking for my little ones, or I should be doing laundry. Just again, putting you first, right? Putting that oxygen mask on you before putting it on to someone else.
Right.
And like PK, I practice gratitude. So I have a gratitude journal where I write 3 things each day at the end of the day. And whether that be, I know when I first started, I was in a very dark place, but whether it be like something really small, like I found a parking space and didn't have to walk all the way from the back. So I do those 3 things. And then I also do one thing that I'm proud of from that day. So again, whether it be something small or big, and then if it is something like I really felt proud of, so say like today it's probably going to be about this panel, and so I'll highlight those days. So when I'm feeling a little lower than my typical self, I'll go back and reread those things. And then lastly, I do one thing that I learned that I'll take on to the next day. So just reflecting, writing has always been a big thing for me, just because I like to go back and read them. So that definitely makes me feel stronger for the closing of the day and then the next morning.
Awesome.
Beautiful work.
Well, I'm an extrovert, so extroverts need people. We all need people, but I need people. So I think for me, COVID is something where there's been so much devastation, and we are hardly unpacking the dynamic of COVID yet. But I've watched myself in this process, and I can feel the turmoil that's there, as many people across the Central Valley and nationally have experienced such horrific consequences. So this group of women that I connect with, one of them being who I suspect, though I can't see, that wrote that comment, how important they are to connect with them, and it is processing or putting out, and they're all therapists too. So, how that goes. They allow me to be angry or fearful or joyful or funny or whiny or whatever it is, creating that space where I can just be myself, and they're there to hold or uplift in whatever thing I need in that moment, and just the validation. And then I think personally, it's writing too, right? I do a lot of poetry. It's always been a private process. I've had, a lot of journals throughout the course of my life. And I think something that's really helpful is sometimes I like to go back and read the old entries, and I'll be like, wow, either grieve for that younger self, or, just honor that younger self, and being able to say, look how we've transformed despite it all. And it really produces a lot of gratitude, even just looking at some of the old things and the spaces that I used to take up, and the spaces that I take up now. And music, I was talking about it before. A good song can just change my mood in the first 30 seconds.
For sure.
And food. I like I like food and I appreciate
Yeah.
it and I do mindfulness around it and I'm okay with it.
I'm with you, Jessica.
My bleeding is that for me. I get lost in the cooking.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think that this has been so meaningful. I don't think it's an accident that I'm getting all of these messages and I met with you ladies today because I struggle so much with self-preservation and healing. I think that, like you said, Jessica, this COVID-19 thing has really made me reflect on some of maybe the toxic things that I have adapted to, and so it just exacerbated it. And I've really had to like reflect on one of the things that I have done that I'm now realizing is toxic. What I used to think was coping was that I work. So one of my things is like, if I'm struggling, let me go work on something, right? And so it has become to where I could be labeled as a workaholic, right? And so I'm working nonstop. And so I'm really never giving myself the time or the space to reflect on my needs. And so one of the things that I'm learning to do right now, of course, with people in my life is be a yes man, yes woman to everything and the opportunities to learn what it is that I like, hobbies, things like that. And so one of the things that I've really just gravitated towards is cultural experiences. And so I have always said that being Black is something that I think is a superpower for me. I really rely on my community to just uplift me. We have Sunday dinners. We haven't had the opportunity to have those too much with the shelter in place, but I can rely on the music. And I think that especially in this role, I've had the opportunity to share some of my culture with people, and they have shared their cultures with me in response, and I think it's been something that I love. If one of the things I used to do was travel all over the place and try new foods and new cultural experiences, and I don't want to go to that touristy place. I want to go to someone's grandma's house. Like, who's inviting me to dinner? Like, I really just need someone to cook for me right now. You know, I want the whole experience, and so I love it so much. I think that, like I think Melissa and Jessica said it, culture is healing. That is something that I love so much. And so I have had to figure out ways of doing it in a meaningful and intentional way, because if not, I rely on some toxic coping skills. And so I really appreciate each of you sharing, because it gives me permission to do the same.
I would like to extend to everyone on the panel and anyone who's watching on YouTube or on Facebook, come to the Art of Anger, do your releasing work. You can come mention the behavioral health panel today and do a bring your own box of stuff. You bring your own stuff. I'm doing the cleanup, but come and do that for free. Bring your own box of stuff is usually a $40 20-minute session. Bring your own box of stuff. No toxic stuff. No, I have the right to refuse anything that's kind of crazy. And then it's like, oh, no, normal, breakable stuff. But copy-sized paper box of stuff, and come do the releasing work. And I will throw in also a free splatter paint cool down in our Zen room. So you have the whole experience. So and ladies on the panel, please come and do this and make room for this stuff you're calling in.
Absolutely. So you took advantage of me being a yes woman. Absolutely, I'll be there. I can't wait. But I do want to just piggyback on your comment and just say, what would each of you in the room say to women who are watching this, who want to promote their healing and self-care? And I want to ask you, Melissa, what would that look like if I was going into the rage room? You had mentioned earlier that some people kind of break down when they're doing it, and so I'm interested into like what that healing looks like.
So sometimes just walking in the space and feeling the sacredness, the love and the healing that space holds can bring people to that point where they start to choke up. What it looks like is you come in and you are going to be geared from head to toe in PPE, shields and construction hats or bike helmets and Tyvek and thick gloves. I'm going to walk you through and give you a brief little tour. We're in 900 square feet of space, and I use every inch of it. And I'm going to have you choose your implement or weapon and introduce you to some of the special ones and the odd ones and such. And And we have a variety of implements and a variety of stuff for breaking, because it is about finding the thing that moves you, that helps you get the momentum of the releasing. For example, I have folded up that are really literally about this big, backs of big screen TVs where folks, those are my metal benders. They've bent it in half and in half again, and it's a tiny little square. And so that's the thing that allowed them to keep doing that repetitive motion. All of it sitting on top of tires, so you can hit the tires and throw the tires. And I tell folks it's hard to throw the tires without going, "Ugh," because they're heavy, and so get your voice into it.
Wow.
And it's a no judgment zone. As I said earlier, yell, scream, cuss, cry, whatever comes out, comes out. When I have teenagers come in, and even when I do groups of people, I always, there's a couple of things that give me the look and I'll know the look. I'll feel it even before you give the look. If someone came with you to support you, but you need them to not be standing there watching at that moment, I'm going to walk them back up front. Because what is sacred for you and what you need is what is paramount. And so even with teenagers and whatnot, and with kids, when I do the yell, scream, cuss, cry, I've already said it to the mom or the dad that booked the appointment, right? So I look over at them for the validation, the verification that that's true. You're not going to get in trouble when you do your homework next week. Like, you were cussing last week at Melissa's place, right? No. And the same thing, if they need mom or dad to walk away from the viewing window, then they'll walk away. They'll go sit in the front. At the end, you're going to get chalk to graffiti my walls. So I'm all about the catharsis from beginning to end. So, and no one gets to watch you. I never know what anybody writes anywhere. I go back and I read it, and I have a couple of them up on, I think, Instagram or Facebook. One person wrote, "I came, I raged, I healed." I loved it. But I don't watch what people write where. And I don't let anybody else watch that either, so that you are completely free to watch whatever you write, whatever you need to write. Some people write messages to their younger self or to the person who harmed them, the stuff that they're releasing. Some people might write messages to us. The whole experience. I hope that was a little bit of an introduction to the experience, but that's encapsulated. And then the cool down. The Zen room is a rage room. It's splatter paint. It's designed for people who may have PTSD and can't stand the crashing sound, or maybe don't have the dexterity and balance to have flying glass coming at them, right? So it's still that up and out motion, but you're throwing paint on a canvas at a wall. But it's a really nice cool down after an intense rage. So because you come out of the rage room and you're maybe a little bit shaky because it's intense. It's very intense. And to come and then go into paint, it's a nice transition. So all of it, it's cathartic. It's beautiful. Thank you for asking. And I look forward to seeing each of you come and do that work.
I personally can't wait, but thank you so much for the invitation.
I'm bringing that group I was talking about, that group that I was just talking about. They're all coming.
Definitely. I love it. And also just know, I know there are a lot of folks that are out there. I do Try It Free Tuesdays every Tuesday for therapists, for counselors, for educators, for first responders, for absolutely anybody who is working with people dealing with trauma. And it's not a full session. It is a come in, get geared up, get wavered up, walk through, get the philosophy, understand. If there's a rage session going on, you can watch for a couple of seconds as long as those folks are okay with that. If there's a room available, then I'm going to let you, you're already geared up. I'm going to have you pick your implement or weapon, and I'm going to give you a couple of pieces of glass and let you experience that and hit the tires and the whole thing, so that you walk out at a minimum understanding what it is that we're doing and why, and you feel what it feels like to be in that space, and why we're different than any other rage room, and why this is a trauma transformation center, and you know what you're referring people to when you, and I love it when folks come in and say, "Oh, my therapist referred me, my counselor referred me, my teacher referred me." I love it. So every Tuesday, and if you can't come on a Tuesday, just call me, but it's an appointment that you can actually book on my website. It's the Try It Free Tuesday. So, but call me and I'll get you in at any other time that you need to come as well.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for that. So everyone else, what would you say to women watching this who want to promote their healing?
Thank you so much for restating the question. All I know now is that I want to go to the rage room. So I would say for promoting your healing is to have somebody else answer the question, because let me take myself out of the rage room really quick. So PK, Jessica.
That's hilarious.
I would say give yourself permission to just be you, whatever that looks like.
Mm.
You know, do take a break. Take a 2 to 3 minute break. I don't know, whatever works for you, but just to allow yourself to be and not so much do, right? And that it's okay to not to be okay, to just be still, to sit with that, those emotions, to sit with the I'm not okay, but it's okay to be just still. Yeah, I would say too, find something that finds you, that is meaningful to you, that just whatever it is. Maybe you need to pray. Maybe you need to just take a moment to breathe. Whatever it is, that it's okay to be you.
This really is a heartfelt question, right? Because we're telling other women, but I think I'm also telling myself this as I say it out loud, and going with PK, like that permissiveness, like I'm worthy, you're worthy. I'm lovable, you're lovable. You're important. You're worth doing this. You're seen, you're validated for your experiences. And again, that permissiveness to just be. When I think of myself as a counselor, one of my like moments where I get the chills, right, is when a person says like, this is the first time I've been able to say this out loud to anyone, or they leave with an empowerment, because we so easily get into those self-sabotaging strategies that we do, or those toxic environments. And so again, just that permissiveness, and that there's a support system and you can create one, and you're deserving of this healing truly. And if you survive the traumatic event, you will survive the recovery, because that resiliency is already there.
Mm-hmm.
Just get in tuned.
Yeah, I would say just let yourself feel. I think that when we just kind of boil up and don't let it out, it comes out in spurts, and you just have these moments where it hurts, or you take it out with anger. So if you just give your space to fully take everything in, and then don't perseverate on it, move forward from there. Let it not define you, but that's really what powers and fuels you moving forward. So also understand that it is a healing process, so it doesn't happen overnight, and that it's always going to be an ongoing thing, that you will have the daily reminders of that you're beautiful, that you're strong, that you're powerful. When I was younger, and even still, my mom used to always say, you're beautiful, powerful, brave, and smart. So I know it sounds cheesy, but if you just keep saying those mantras within your head, or find a quote, you'd be surprised how empowering it really is.
Thank you all so much for this. I think this has been so meaningful, and it's something that I think is necessary. And there's probably people, I know me personally, I'm speaking for myself, I needed this today. And so I appreciate each of you for just being who you are. I really just, you have had an impact on people's lives, and so I appreciate you. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. I just want to add something else too, is that, sometimes we can't do it alone. Sometimes we need professional help, and, there's no shame in that. If you need the help, get help, right? And so I know there's a lot of stigma around mental health and around all that. I just want to say, if you need the help, you need the help, and only you can do that for yourself. No one else can force you into treatment, or force you to get the help you need. So
PK, what would you say is a signifier or some red flags that you might need to reach out to somebody else to get some help?
I would say, if you're losing sleep, if you're not going to work, if you're just not able to, do daily tasks because you're just, not feeling well. If you're having suicidal thoughts, if your health is on the line, I would say that's the time to get help. And again, there's no shame in that. We all need help at some time in our life, and it's so important that you be the person to initiate that for yourself.
Very well said. Thank you, PK. I just kind of want to just highlight something that has come up and been a theme of worthiness. And I just want to say, just for anyone watching, there is nothing that you can do to make yourself worthy. You are worthy. You don't have to prove that worthiness, your value. We want you to be here. Like, I'm not even of any authority to say that. Like, I may not even know you. You are worthy. You are valuable. And there is nothing that you can do that will take from that worthiness or that value. Right. I just want to put that out there. Thank you so much for this conversation. We have 5 minutes left. I want to leave some space for you to say anything else that you think would be valuable information for our audience to hear. Please feel free. Just be mindful of the time.
Well, I just want to thank you for having this and bringing us all together. I feel like a sacred connection now of all of us in this space together. And I feel really honored to be here and have been moved by everyone and what they've shared and what they've said. So I just want to say that, and I appreciate you, Tiffany, for bringing this together and the work and advocacy that you're doing through every panel that you have put together. It's incredible work. So thank you.
Thank you. It's life-changing work. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
I second that. Jessica said it so well.
I would third that. Thank you to all of you for being such a powerful woman. And also, I'd just like to give a shout out to my own mother, because I know that I wouldn't be half the person I am without somebody really leading and guiding me throughout that way. Hear that? So, and to all the women out there, you've gone through so much, and I know that you're strong again. I have no authority to say that either, but just know it's a fact.
What's that book? Women hold up half the sky. We hold up half the sky, and we hold up each other.
Yes, yeah, I love it.
For sure.
Also, just adding a shout out to Kyleen's mom as well. Thank you so much for bringing this wonderful woman into the world. I appreciate her so much. I've learned so much from her in the short time that I've known her. So thanks, Kyleen's mom.
Patricia hears that.
Thank you all for being here and for being the incredibly powerful women that you are. It is definitely an honor and a privilege to be on this panel with you. And I've learned so much, and I've just also, as Jessica said, been moved. I like goosebumps and chills several times. It's just different things that people said, and just so heartwarming. It feels just really good to be in this circle with you. So thank you.
I would love to meet each and every one of you in person. I mean, I'm just thinking, like, what if we had this panel discussion and it was like in person, right? That would be so awesome. But it's so nice to hear the work that you all do, and I'm deeply inspired by that. And I think we've just made a connection here, and just kind of broadened that like networking. So this is a great way to end a Friday, right?
Yes.
It's to be inspired by other women. So
we might have to do a doodle poll to get together and come rage together at the same time.
Down.
Sounds good.
Down.
Yes.
Sounds amazing. Yes.
Sounds good.
We should have had this panel discussion at the Rage Room, like while we're smashing things. Like. Maybe for the future. Thank you all so much for this. I really appreciate this. I want to just continue to give my gratitude to each of you, just again, for being yourselves and for coming and presenting in this panel discussion. And so I do want to also just give a quick shout out to Brian, who is behind the scenes giving us, he always makes these panel discussions seem so flawless. He does amazing work. We also want to give a quick shout out to Ahmad, my supervisor, who makes these panel discussions possible, who really just advocates and highlights the need for things like this and having these diverse discussions. And so thanks, Ahmad. Yeah. And I want to encourage anybody who's interested in learning more about panel discussions like this. We plan to have these ongoing. You can visit our website at dbhequity.org. We will be having more panel discussions. I hope that we will even see some of these panelists come back, maybe for another panel in the future. But
about Ahmad, I love all of what is going on in the Department of Behavioral Health. It's just the way that diversity is being approached, and I know that the two of you are working really closely on that, and it's just, your work is beautiful, and just the leadership of wanting to do that work and making it critically important and integrating it into everything. It doesn't seem like, sometimes, and I've done diversity and cultural competency work for years in the community. Sometimes it's a put upon, like it's a oh yeah, we're supposed to do this. This really feels so integrated and so real, and I love that. I really love seeing that. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We're anti-check boxes here, so we are all about, making it real, making it meaningful, and having an impact.
Yeah, I can tell, and that's nice.
I appreciate that so much.
People accessing,
Yeah. Well, if there's nothing else, we're going to go ahead and end our panel discussion. Thank you all so much. I hope that you take the time to meet your needs for the rest of the day.
Awesome. Bye, ladies. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.